All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Zach Hubeck with Wave LLC. Welcome to AirWAVs. Today's AirWAVs recording is all about the state of the hospitality market. And I am just honored to be amongst several thought leaders in the market today. I will introduce this group in just one moment, let themselves introduce each other, and that would actually be fun. But first, what I want to do is really talk about and level set why we're here today. We got to look at the past and move forward with the future here, but really the purpose of bringing all these folks together is talk about the hospitality market. And it's May 2021. In my humble opinion, we are at a sunsetting stage of the COVID-19 pandemic. Clearly, hospitality has been one of the most impacted industries because of COVID-19. So in March, April of 2020, our worlds were just very, very disrupted. And we're now at this point where we're starting to see travel resume and vaccinations outnumber citizens. And it's a great time to now talk about where we're at in the industry, talk about technology and some things that may have come out of the evolution of this pandemic and new adoption of technology and what the modern hotel looks like today. So again, we've got a great panel here, and let's start with introductions. Gentlemen, we're going to go ladies first. So why don't we start with Beth Milano. Beth, tell the group to model excellence here. Tell us who you are and how you apply in the hospitality market.
All right, thanks, Zach. Hi, everybody. Beth Milano. I am with Cloud5 Communications. We are a Chicago-based company. I'm actually a remote employee, although today I'm actually in Chicago, living in Las Vegas. Viva Las Vegas. So I run the sales organization within Cloud5, and I will not talk about how long, Zach, I've been in hospitality because I can't do the math that quickly in my head.
Beautiful. You know, as we, the one thing I noticed, big hockey fan here, the Blackhawks unfortunately are not in the playoffs, but seeing the Vegas Knights Stadium, absolutely jam-packed, man, talking about a leading indicator of a sunsetting pandemic and vaccinations, really cool to see that. I loved it. And certainly will play into our conversation today.
Vegas is starting to come back. I think June 1st is actually the date where all restrictions go away. So we're pretty excited.
All right. Very cool. Well, welcome, Beth. I'm glad you're here. Why don't we bounce over to Jeff? Jeff, who are you, sir?
Well, first and foremost, after that intro, I have to say, go Avalanche. You're all going to lose. We're going to beat you. I'm going to beat you well. My name is Jeff Parker. I have been in the hospitality industry for more than 30 years, focused on restaurants initially, and then hotels for the last long time, with the majority of that being focused on technology. I've been involved with ownership groups, with regional brands, with large national brands, large management companies, and most recently I took a role where I'm working with a group of owned and managed hotels that are predominantly flagged by the big players in the space, Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt. You guys all know the players. My role is, a technology advisor, doer, problem solver for these hotels. And the ownership group. We're involved heavily in purchasing, certainly in keeping up with brand standards and managing the ever-changing guest needs based on whatever device they have in their pocket, and certainly the perception of security and simplicity of use. Obviously, in the last year, we've been focused a lot on what does contactless mean? Does it make a difference? But I really see we're starting to see a trend, as you said, change, particularly in the US market. Some of the international markets are still very heavily hit, as we know, but I'm starting to see a trend in consumers starting to come back, particularly in the leisure market, and changing our model based on the labor shortage that exists, but certainly on some of the new technology initiatives that guests embraced over the last year that we're hoping to leverage for future successes.
Beautiful. Jeff, awesome intro there, sir. We're going to get into a lot of those topics you just hit on. So really good segue there. Let's bounce over to Mr. Chavey. Brett, tell the group who you are.
Thanks, Zach. So my name is Brett Schavey, and I'm with CommScope, which for those of you who come from perhaps the facilities side of the house, you might be familiar with the SystemX brand. If you're coming from the telecom side of the house, you're probably familiar with the DAS and small cell solutions, but most people in hospitality are more familiar with the Ruckus brand for its Wi-Fi and switching solutions. So I'm the global hospitality leader for CommScope, responsible across the full portfolio of products. And my role there is really to identify, brand needs and help make sure that I serve as that conduit back to the product teams so that we're bringing out the right product sets, product solutions, and aligning our go-to-market strategy to meet the needs of the brands and the owners in that space.
Awesome.
And that's what I'm doing.
Very cool. Brett, welcome, sir. All right,
Thanks.
last but not least, Mr. Stephen Bronken, or AKA Bronkaroo. Who are you, sir?
Well, Stephen Bronken, I'm the EVP of Marketing and Brand Management here at Safety NetAccess. We're a technology provider for hospitality as well as other market segments. I'm based up here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and I am desperately looking to get out of Canada and start traveling again in the industry.
All right, we'll get you there. I think I have to tip my cap to Stephen because I really view Stephen as kind of the glue of the hospitality industry. When you look at keeping everybody together, Stephen's got his office that he does usually at the high tech shows, the HT&G shows, bringing everybody together. We're in hospitality. We are meant to be together. And Stephen brought that back to the group in a virtual way to run his office meetings and just be able to sit back, enjoy some cocktails with colleagues, people like this on the call, and just keep everybody connected. So Stephen, excellent job doing that in the last year here. And I swear, brother, we'll get you out of Canada as soon as we can. All right. Hang in there, my
Zach,
man.
and I attribute that all to alcohol and people's love of it. I had nothing to do with it.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start off? Jeff, I want to start with you, sir. So why don't we start with any leading or lagging indicators in the hospitality market to really gauge, are we going to return to pre-pandemic travel levels? What do the tarot cards say from that perspective? Are there any leading or lagging indicators you're seeing that we're going to return soon to pre-pandemic travel levels, sir?
So it depends on, part of that is the definition of pre-pandemic travel levels. In many ways, we already are there. Leisure travel is spiking at above 2019 levels for many of the markets that we're involved in. We're seeing a lot of pent-up demand coupled with hotels with some really good value out there, and the airlines themselves with some really good value, where people are taking advantage of that, getting out of the house, hopefully because they're vaccinated, but for whatever reason, that pent-up demand is hitting our hotels, and they're starting to see it. It certainly is causing model shift for us, right? Leisure travelers are different than business travelers. I think the real indicator you're looking for, though, in those tea leaves is going to be that business travel return, and why we're seeing the IBT market, the independent business traveler, come back to some extent. It's really that conference and meeting space that a lot of our hotels are driven on. This is going to be the indicator of a return to pre-COVID markets. And we're not seeing a lot of that yet. Between businesses being concerned about their team members, certainly local restrictions changing, ever changing, and not knowing that planning a conference even 2 or 3 months away from now is going to come to fruition because something could change. Businesses aren't taking their risk, and certainly coupled with the concerns of insurance and other stuff. If somebody does get sick at your conference center, what happens, who gets sued, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of hesitation in that market. So until that happens, I don't think you're going to see the spend that you saw of the business market for quite some time. But certainly the leisure market is getting us along. I have hotels that are 100% occupied Thursday through Saturday. We are seeing a lift on youth groups, so sports, cheerleaders. There's a hockey tournament in Mount Laurel, New Jersey last week that was great, that filled up our hotels out there. I know there's a big volleyball tournament in Denver this week because they were all on the airplane coming back with me earlier in the week. So we're starting to see that travel hit. So the leisure market and the Smurf market is coming back. Good indicators, very positive. But as we know, that's not the bread and butter of many of our industry. Downtown Denver market doesn't survive on cheerleader tournaments or volleyball tournaments. They really need that conference space to come back.
Got it. I'd imagine on that flight, you now have a few fight songs in your repertoire that you now sing in your sleep.
And pretended they were not there.
I think for me personally, that's been one of the most challenging things. Just as a business traveler, it's not only do you have to figure out your schedule and your willingness and your company's own philosophy to travel, but are your customers going to be willing to receive you at this point? And we've really got to navigate those things as we return here. So why don't I bounce it over to Beth? Beth, at Cloud5, what are your current travel philosophies? Obviously, you're home based in Vegas and you're traveling to Chicago for some headquarter meetings, but are you seeing Cloud5 travel now? And are there any indicators you're seeing in the hospitality market that are positive for you?
Yeah, I mean, good indicators, we were traveling all last year doing installs, of course, adhering to all of the safety protocols, but we are starting to see just in general, my team, the sales team, start to travel a little bit more. And it really is dependent upon kind of the customer and what their comfort level is. And so that's where we're just letting it kind of happen organically. And the customers that are comfortable, that are ready to see people face to face in 3D, as I call it, we're going there. Because I think, to Jeff's point, there's just so much pent up demand. People are ready to get beyond kind of just seeing everyone on your screen, and really get back to that face to face interaction. We're hospitality for a reason, right? We all thrive on being able to just really interact on a just global overall level, right? And so we're seeing that. The one thing that I think we're seeing also is it's nice that we have a benefit with our contact center, that we kind of start to get early indicators before the industry is seeing it, because we're taking gen res calls, right? So we were really getting a lot of demand, and really, frankly, just slammed for those areas where Jeff was talking about, right? The leisure areas, the resort areas, the kind of coastal. So that's a positive indicator that consumer confidence is coming back, and it's a good thing.
Yep.
I think that business travel will start to just slowly inch up month over month throughout this year, which is good for everyone. It's good for the industry. It's good for the bigger cities, right? Because those are the ones that are the hardest hit and are the slowest to come back right now.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome, Beth. Why don't we bounce over to Stephen? I know, we obviously know what's going on with Canada right now, but, you're a Boston-based company. What are you seeing in the States? And is your team traveling about and visiting folks in the U.S.? Might still be on mute, sir.
Apologies.
There you are.
The spacebar trick didn't work where you push the spacebar down and unmute. So for some reason, I had to go the old manual mouse way.
Hey, we got
so
you now.
Apologies for that. Yeah. So as you mentioned, Zach, Canada is locked down, and folks here from our team aren't traveling, but our folks in the US have actually started up again. In terms of our sales team and our business development team. So we've started a couple of weeks ago, going to events, going back to different meetings and so forth like that, in-house meetings and external meetings. So, which is good. And it has been, somewhat slow. I've been gauging their reaction because of my lacking of travel has expressed a little bit more interest in everyone else's travel. And so I've been living vicariously through them a little bit. They'll often turn on their laptop while they're sitting at the bar just so I can get that experience. But that being said, one of the events that we went to the other week, it was attended for about 100 folks, about half showed up. So I still think there is that hesitation for folks to come back to the industry to travel. I think that's going to reduce within the next, I'd say, month at most, maybe month or two before we're back at full capacity. But we're definitely looking forward to everything going back to normal. During the pandemic, though, as Beth mentioned, our teams were still out there following pandemic guidelines and so forth like that, hitting a lot of our hotels. But the large shift in the industry during that time was actually to new construction. A lot of the existing hotels with refreshes actually paused based on brand standards, so that they didn't have to make any changes for a while. So when you're deploying a new hotel, a new construction versus an existing hotel, it's a lot easier to follow those pandemic guidelines because you're not running into staff and so forth like that and going into their personal space and have to worry about cleanliness behind you.
Got it. Very good. Everybody has 10,000 square feet to themselves in those new construction environments, not the 6 feet as mandated by the CDC. I get it. Very cool. Well, good. Well, why don't we bounce back over to Jeff? So when we look at this, again, like I say, sunsetting pandemic mode, what are some of the hoteliers' top technological priorities today? You talked about contactless, and what are some of the things that hoteliers are looking for from a technology perspective right now?
Well, I certainly hear a lot of owners chiming in on the mobile key initiative. But frankly, when I advise them, that's something that I advise them against, that the take rates we are seeing in the market aren't good. We're not seeing a reduction in the usage of keys, and frankly, you still have to touch the door handle. So we're really more focused on strategies that involve kiosks or time shifting or place shifting employees. So several of the hotels that I'm working with are looking at, remote night audit, for example, or kiosks. So there's a couple of kiosk providers out there. We don't need to talk about them specifically, but kiosks are kind of that bridge in between where you can still get a key issued. They can still do an ID check, which is a big struggle with mobile key right now. And you get that personal touch, right? You can, Hertz has been doing it forever, but a video conference with an employee that's physically separated from you, and even maybe geographically separated from you, is going to allow for that customer service touch that you really don't get with a mobile device. So I think kiosks are hot and heavy, and I've got a lot of owners looking, investing it. We're actually beta testing a product in the field right now at one of our hotels in Florida that allows for that. I do think that there's going to be a lot more that's delivered via messaging as far as customer service. That's a very hot topic with my owners, certainly with the brands as I discuss with them. And then paying homage to what this talk is about, we're talking a lot about improving infrastructure. So between the brand mandates on getting, into the latest Wi-Fi standard, the latest guest entertainment standard, the latest staff emergency or feedback standard, along with life safety, telecom, and all the other things we've been doing for guests for a long time. A lot of the investment that we're talking about in the next 18 to 24 months is that infrastructure, building out better cable plants, putting in new Wi-Fi networks, talking about putting in, solutions, whether that be a private LTE network or really extending 5G out. And also, what those entertainment options are. I think guests have gotten used to the entertainment on demand wherever they're at because they've been at home binge watching Orange is the New Black or whatever they're doing, and they want that service in your hotel room. And that we're seeing a lot of uptick on that. So that's really good news for us. We're also seeing, it's interesting, a move away from shuttles. And so other than hotels that are very specifically to airports, most of the hotels in my space are getting rid of that van driver that would take you around to the local businesses. And we're leveraging Uber or some of the other solutions for ride sharing to take place to that, because we're having a hard time finding staff members to run those vans. There's a huge expense associated with it. And the on-demand nature of the world today is, I want to ride now, not at the half an hour you're coming to the airport schedule.
Wow.
So those are a lot of the changes I'm seeing. Contactless is something we still talk about, but again, going to the door and opening it is still done by touching the door. And we're not seeing a lot of guests clamoring for that.
Sure.
We're still issuing the same amount of keys as we did before. So I think we're really looking at other strategies to make that safer touch rather than touchless.
Understood. I think also, the with mobile key initiatives too, you're reliant on that user or that patron to come in and be have a mobile device, number one, but also be eloquent enough or understanding enough of the technology to do so. And you would think our seniors and others that may just not resonate well with them, and you're going to wind up with card keys as well for that audience. So good information there. Jeff, I'm going to keep it with you for just one more minute here. I've got to think, in last year, we did see a lot with furloughing and, a lot of folks hurting in the industry. I'd imagine there's a cost savings element of technology as far as room climate control and energy savings and things like that. Can you speak to that real quickly in regard to how that fits into priorities with hoteliers today?
Well, certainly, in their municipalities, particularly on the West Coast, where if there's a new build or you're doing any major renovations in a hotel, which a lot of us did in the downturn, let's be honest, there is some energy management that you're mandated to put in that, several states, like I said, on the West Coast are mandating that. We are seeing some savings related to that. And some of the simpler stuff, a lot of the technology has been around a long time. Incom had door sensors in doors 20 years ago. to try to guess what occupancy stat that was. I think some of the newer technologies are detecting CO2 levels and a little bit of motion and heat sensing, and really make a big difference in what's going on there. But as much as there's a lot of opportunity there, and we're exploring that, particularly in markets that are, we'll say, just say Texas, particularly in Texas, where energy prices can fluctuate based on the market and demand in ways that doesn't really happen in the rest of the country. We're looking at strategies to mitigate that through the use of technology, through the use of occupancy sensors, but also just regular scheduling of a network device. Once you put a thermostat on the network, whatever network that be, whether it be Zigbee or lower RAN or Wi-Fi, you can start to have a little more control over that room and set points and making stuff work there. But also to control things like humidity. And we've had a lot of hotels that haven't had a lot of occupancy in very humid climates. You still need to be running those air conditioners in order to make sure you have mold mitigation. And the same is true here in beautiful Colorado. It gets cold here. And if you don't have proper heat controls, you have pipe bursts and other problems there. So having a centralized plant that all hooks up together to analyze that has savings that are beyond just the energy savings. It's not just about a kilowatt hour saved here or a butane hour saved here. It's more about protecting the entire environment and still delivering good service. I've seen a lot of investment in hotels that have patio doors or some kind of balcony where the door opens. We have a beautiful property in Milpitas, California that's got that. It's gorgeous, but we want to make sure that air conditioning unit goes off or heat unit goes off when that door's open, so we're not heating the outside, as my mother used to say when I left the door open. But I think with the greenfield, green sprout stuff, you're seeing a lot of that energy management go into play. As far as the retrofit stuff, it's really on a use case basis. Certainly Texas scared the hell out of us earlier this year, and we're making some initiatives there to help control that. And I think as energy costs go up or become more dramatically fluctuating, which they will, not just in Texas, you'll see more of that technology going into the room, and more of that smartness, making sure you're maintaining that room even when it's not occupied.
Yep. Texas said, "What's a heater?" when that occurred.
Yeah, good time to be in the propane business in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Well, good. Well, why don't we bounce over to Brett? So, Jeff, you touched on a couple of points about you're going to need a strong Wi-Fi network. You're going to need this highway for all of these devices and this automation and this contactless stuff to work. And really, CommScope and Ruckus has really led the way here for this market in this industry. Brett, why don't we talk about a little bit as you hear Jeff and the group talk about the needs of hoteliers, what are some of the ways CommScope and Ruckus is innovating to help this industry?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And in fact, I wanted to jump in and build off of something that Jeff was talking about. When we look at the opportunity for cost savings associated with converging some of these networks or bringing some of these disparate networks back online, like bringing your energy management system online, besides the operational cost savings that you can realize just by reducing that, the heating and cooling costs. And we've got an ecosystem partner that has some great case studies published out there talking about some large marquee properties who, when they brought all of their thermostats and interim sensors online property-wide, they were able to realize a 45% cost savings on an annualized basis, right? So it's not insignificant what you can save there, but then the value stacks, because now not only do you have the operational cost savings, but you have reduced cycle time on the HVAC gear itself. That offers some additional savings. And then you've got, because of the machine learning and AI engines that back these systems up, we've found that you've been able to predict downtime. So you can proactively schedule maintenance cycles and address downtimes before they happen. And that has an impact then on the guest satisfaction, right? So it's this stacked value around doing that. And what we're finding and what we've been really focused on from the CommScope perspective is, how do we leverage the existing infrastructure to do that, number one? So utilizing things like, hey, I've got access points in every room. Why don't I leverage that access point, not just for my HSIA traffic, but to onboard all of the other applications, the operational service technology stacks, to bring that on board at the same time, whether that be Zigbee for my door locks, BLE for my staff alert or staff duress systems, and converge that on one infrastructure. And that allows for some pretty significant capital expense savings on the part of the owners, particularly if you can identify that need up front. You're saving on external gateways, additional and redundant cable drops, switch ports, the footprint in the IDF, heating, cooling, electric, et cetera. And that begins to add up with some significant operational savings. So I think there's a lot to look at there. So as we've stepped back, CommScope from really the beginning of COVID had taken a number of steps to help with that, starting with extending support policies. We had a number of brands reach out to us, and they were really concerned because at the same time COVID was hitting, they were also seeing an uptick in the security threats. So there was a lot more phishing attempts, a lot more penetration attempts associated with, or just coincidentally timed with the pandemic. So we also rolled back our support policies in our software lifecycle so that we could address those security concerns with releases that would support older, previously deployed networks. Now, what we're really looking at is focusing on the needs. It kind of starts with the big brands, if you will. And I think from the big brands, it's extensible out to smaller brands, independents and boutiques, and what they need. And it's really about helping, owners are under a much more increased, more urgent sense of preserving cash flow while they're being asked to make new technology investments. We talked about the contactless guest journey. There's certainly technology investments associated with that, but there's also the need and desire to preserve my capital for where I make it. So some of the things that we've been starting to really focus on in terms of where we're innovating is really helping the owners and brands understand what properties require those investments and which ones can be deferred so that they're able to make a more data-informed decision. It's great that the brands have kind of set back their brand standard requirements for a year and said, hey, we're not going to force any updates. But that doesn't mean that the needs have gone away, right? There are some properties that really do need it, and there's an increased sensitivity around brand loyalty right now. There's been some recent studies, coming out of the pandemic that even as business travel is starting to ramp up, a lot of the decisions that were largely driven through a brand preference, now there's other factors weighing into that decision. And that's a two-edged sword, right? Brands are struggling to rebuild brand loyalty. And that means a focus on that guest experience, while at the same time looking at other ways to monetize the networks. So data-informed decisions is number one. Helping to monetize their networks is number two. So there's some new avenues for monetizing the network, the data we get from the network, and the space itself on the property. And then thirdly is that convergence conversation we just had with Jeff around how can we converge those operational technology stacks on the property for that CapEx and OpEx. So we kind of roll that in to help owners make data-informed decisions, and then when and where they make those technology investments, allowing them to defer the capital expense, potentially convert it to OpEx. And in many cases, and this is one of these little known things that the accountants and the finance people like to do, sometimes you want to keep some of those assets off your books. So CommScope's been putting a wrapper around this to allow us to do a network as a service, make the technology investment, but tie it back, particularly for those that would qualify for it, to an occupancy-based model, so that we can help the owners, the franchisees, make those investments and then ride the recovery so that they're paying for those investments as their business supports it. That's really where we've been focusing, Zach.
Awesome. Brett, great, robust answer there. Really great insights. Awesome. Beth, I'm going to jump over to you, miss. So you replayed the tape March, April 2020, stay-at-home orders. Holy cow. We absolutely are impacted by this. How has Cloud5 really pivoted? And Bronken, you're on deck here, brother. How has the role of the hospitality service provider evolved since the beginning of the pandemic? And are there some adjacent markets you've really pivoted to that are similar? So what did you guys do as far as your strategy when all of this hit?
I think the biggest thing, Brett hit on it a little bit, as did Jeff, that, operational efficiency obviously was super important before, but in 2020, it became even more important because everybody was trying to do more with less. I mean, just during my travels, talking to GMs and management companies, everybody's wearing hats, right? The GM is now working the front desk because they're just strapped, and they're continue to be strapped into 21 just due to labor shortages. So really what we kind of focused on is how can we double down to ratchet up our support to help with those limited resources that the properties we're supporting today and last year. Where can we kind of step in to help out and make sure that their needs are being met from a customer focused perspective. So that was one, and really kind of getting into that space and managed IT services, think those kind of things. The other piece is, and this is not atypical for the other players in our space for Cloud5, but we moved into the MDU space because I think as everyone now, your office was your home, right? They recognize that, wow, maybe this, I set up my network myself doesn't really work that well. And just going to Fry's and buying, some kind of makeshift router doesn't work that well. So really moving into that, to the MDU space, not only multifamily, just apartment condos, but also the senior living space. That's really where we've kind of spent our time last year and looking at that and doubling down and really expanding and growing it this year.
Very cool. Yeah. So we saw people going away from hotels, and now at home, it was not only your workspace, but it was also your school. So a lot of folks just needed robust networks. And when you've got mom and 3 kids all doing, and dad, all 5 of them, 6 of them, 7 of them, however many, doing Teams calls, doing Zoom calls, learning, working every single day. You're absolutely right. The off-the-shelf brand from your local electronic store Wi-Fi isn't going to cut the mustard. So yeah, absolutely. Moving into that MDU space, you're absolutely correct. I've seen a lot of service providers go there. So right on. I think a lot, there's the human factor of this as well. We're talking about technology today, but there's that human element as well. And how can I help you, Mr. Hotelier? How can I help you do more with less? And I understand you're wearing so many hats. There's an empathetic side of that. We're here to help and understand and be an ear. And I think we've all kind of played that role during this as well. So that's an important key. Let's not forget that human element. And I applaud you for doing that. Excellent work. Mr. Bronken, same question for you, sir. How have you guys pivoted over at Safety NetAccess?
Sure. So a lot like Beth mentioned, actually, over the last year and a half, it has been a journey, even though we haven't gone anywhere. Right. We of course have had a small reduction in staff at the very beginning, like many of the companies that were out there. And then afterwards, once everything stabilized, we actually focused and doubled down on our operations, ironing out, investing in that, making sure that things were working absolutely perfectly, because when there is less activity, you have that time to ensure that everything is working right, so that when you're building it back up, everything goes even better. Right. And so we're reaping the fruits of that labor right now. Additionally, we've actually gotten into several other markets in the last while. Our executive team, we have every couple of weeks, we have an idea night, and we throw different ideas out about, how can we be better company? How can we improve? How can we reach more clients? How can we provide more services, etc.? So really, we've expanded that. So specifically within hospitality, we've expanded and kind of formalized more in terms of our voice products, our television products, as well as our audio products and CCTV products to clients, so that as there's left staff, they only have one number to call and they need something fixed, they can just pick up the phone and call one number and get our team that they can do that for. It's not searching around calling 6 or 7 people, having those companies point at each other until they finally figure out what the issue is. So that was within hospitality. Outside of that, we've grown our MDU space as well. We've really focused on that over the last year, and then as well our senior living. We work with some great partners in the senior living space and have had a lot of great momentum there. Additional to that, we actually opened up our very first event productions company in the last year and a half, which is S&A Event Productions, run by Martin Quitshaw, one of the industry titans in that field. So we've really spent the last year and a half kind of doubling down on our company and kind of expanding it and being better at what we can do. But in addition to that, really going after and diversifying those markets. If something like this happens again to the hospitality industry, we want to be prepared so that it's not such a big hit for us, as well as all the other LSPs that are out there, right? We want to be even more stable than we are today. So it's been as I mentioned, a journey, but we're getting there. Everything's going well. So
beautiful. I love it. Well, why don't we, if we look at our time here, really 35, 40 minutes goes by super, super quick. Why don't we just end on closing thoughts? What does that post-pandemic hotel look like in your mind's eye? What are some of the applications or things that, we've talked about so much, suppressing shuttle service, doing contactless, automation, using data and at our fingertips to be able to drive decisions. Why don't we just go around the room real quick? And what does that post-pandemic hotel look like? You can also talk about any events or things we're looking forward to get back together. So why don't we start with Brett? What does that post-pandemic hotel look like in your mind's eye? And go right ahead, sir.
All right, thanks for that. No, and I think this is really one of the exciting things that comes out of this. And it's probably a character fault of mine that I tend to be eternally optimistic, and I'm always looking for that silver lining.
You're
but
in good company.
See, and I'd rather be that side of the coin, right? But I see there's an appetite right now for more change, for shifting the paradigm. We've already gone through such a paradigm shift in terms of our work, our schooling, and in the hospitality space, what that guest experience is. Guests are coming in with a different set of expectations based on what they just got done experiencing at home. And if they're going to travel and they want to travel because of that pent-up demand, they're going to travel for leisure. But now they want an experience that is not just as good as, but better than what they had at home. And they want something different than what they wanted before. A lot of them, I'll put myself in that camp, don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time face-to-face with front desk. That contactless journey does resonate. And so I'm also seeing from brands, not only the need and desire to reinvigorate that brand relationship, deepen the relationship with the guest, but that means there's some other paradigm shifts, like maybe the way we bring guests onto the network is different. So things like Passpoint, and then if we have a Passpoint infrastructure in place, leveraging that for, guests aren't the only users of our networks. Let's bring on the back of house devices, the headless devices, my CCTV, my IoT devices. And when we bring them on and we bring them on in that context, we now have a lot more information about who the user is, what the device is, what they're doing. And that allows us to really create this sort of 360-degree view of the guest and of the use of my property. And all the technologies are here. It's really now just us connecting the dots to do that on behalf of the brand and on behalf of the owner, to give them those insights and allow them to make much better decisions about their sales and marketing, their upgrades and technology investments, et cetera. So that's where I see that smart hotel is going. And, and I'm excited about it because frankly, most all that technology is ready to go, right? It's really just putting it in place.
Right on. Awesome. Why don't we bounce over to Jeff? Stephen, you are on deck, and Beth, you're in the hole. Jeff, go for it.
Well, first and foremost, my hotel of the post-pandemic future has Stephen Bronken at the bar buying me drinks.
Heck yeah.
It also has me at the bar buying you drinks. So I'm glad we
Perfect. Glad we're on the same page. I see there's a short-term and a long-term game here. I think that the one thing I'm seeing at the hotels that I'm working with right now is the presence of desks or workspaces going back into rooms, that there is an expectation from our guests today that they can do those Zoom calls from their room, whether they're staycationing or workcationing or schoolcationing or whatever they're doing. There's time allotted every day now for somebody to sit in front of a Zoom call or whatever that is that we kind of got away from in 2018 and 2019. You saw much smaller workspaces, right? You saw hotels without workspaces go into trends and stuff. We're seeing those come back in. Several of my hotels are leveraging old meeting tables that they're putting in and dressing up or whatever they need to do to allow for that extra workspace in the rooms. And that's happening short term, that's happening today. And I'm seeing that across whether you're a 4-star, 5-star property or whether you're an economy or extended stay brand, that's happening today. That also has to leverage that technology that Brett was talking about. You better have rock solid Wi-Fi if you're going to have 100 Zoom calls going on at the same time in your property, which gets to be very simple in today's world, very expected in today's world. I do see us as hoteliers right now, we've not spent a lot of money in the last year. We're keeping the lights on, right? And there's not a lot of process efficiencies that hotels picked up right away when you're only turning 5 or 6 rooms a day instead of 50 or 60 or more like you were before. When the GM is working front desk and banquet captain and running the breakfast line in the morning, they're not spending time and doing process improvement there. And the brands kind of gave us a year off, right? They said, we're not going to ask for a lot of investment. We understand you're keeping the lights on. Well, this year is the year of investment, whether we have the investment or not, it seems like sometimes. So I'm definitely seeing the brands wanting to push some of those initiatives back into the forefront, certainly around security. So you're going to see a lot more security, whether that's Passpoint solutions, whether that's better credit card security, whether that's better entry monitoring or staff presence monitoring. That's coming in. That's very important right now. And a lot of investment I see going there. I think the next thing is going to be that hotels are going to start opening restaurants again. At least I certainly hope so, because I need to be at that bar with Steven, so they have to be open. But the vast majority of my hotels in California, the vast majority of my hotels on the East Coast don't have open restaurants right now. They're relying on Uber Eats or DoorDash to bring in what was a room service component. It's going to be a ramp up of 6, 10, 12 weeks before that restaurant decides they're ready to service in-house guests again. And I think that you're starting to see us hitting the breaking point of that. You were looking for an indicator. That's a good indicator of things returning to normal when hotels start having the revenues to justify having a restaurant and food and beverage department running again. So that's what the near future is. But I agree 100% with Brett. The long-term future, the 18, 24, 36-month future, better infrastructure in hotels, doing more with less, getting better at making sure our staff is safe, our guests are safe, and delivering customer service in ways that isn't always human contact, or at least direct human contact. We're leveraging messaging, we're leveraging video conferencing, we're leveraging all the tools that we're all used to now to get better at delivering customer service specifically to a guest at a point in time while being safe for everybody.
Nice. Jeff, you talk about 100 Zoom calls at once or 100 Teams calls at once. The other day, I set up an audio only meeting, and it was the most obscure thing I've done as a professional. It's like, I don't even remember how to just put in a conference bridge. It's, let me just click Zoom, let me click Teams, and now I expect that I'm going to video call someone. You see a lot of memes on the internet. Can't we just go back to phone calls? And it's there. You're absolutely right. People are just going to be working inside those rooms. There is an expectation because we can work anywhere and prove that we are productive anywhere. You are going to see a lot of that going back inside the room. So stellar point, sir. All right, Mr. Bronken, you're up, and then we'll close with Beth.
Sure. So I think Jeff had a lot of great points. Actually, stole a lot of my stuff. So just for whatever Jeff said, and then I'll add this on top.
Plus one.
I think it's going to be options. I think for the next, the immediate future until things get settled on what people want, I think it's going to be options. They're going to be allowed to check in any way that they want. They're going to be allowed to, work in any way that they want. There's going to be all kinds of, as Jeff mentioned, desk infrastructure as well. I think that people are going to try to build that up a little bit, try to bring back not only just the simple desk that was in the room with the uncomfy office chair, but they're actually going to start working on that a little bit better, making the office environment there better. Because in the immediate future, I see people, bring their kids on them. Everyone hasn't gone anywhere in a very long time, and summer's just about upon us. So business people, when they do start traveling again, are going to make that into a business/vacation for their family. And instead of a 3-day trip, they're going to make it a 5-day trip, bring the kids and go out and see the sights, right? I think that's going to happen. I think we're also going to notice, back to the bandwidth infrastructure, a large shortcoming in that. There's a lot of properties out there that have not upgraded their circuits in a very long time. And I think that they're going to be hitting capacity as soon as everybody starts getting back to that travel, because there are going to be those hundreds of Zoom calls going on, and bandwidth that they've had for the last 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, maybe 8 years that they haven't touched in terms of their circuit capacity is all of a sudden going to be flooded because of the uptick, and they haven't even thought about it in the last 8 months. So it's a little bit of everything, I guess. There's going to be a lot of options for a lot of people. There's going to be the messaging as well for short-staffed and so forth like that until people get back to normal. And essentially, there's going to be bandwidth bottlenecking, I guess, is going to be happening very soon.
Alternatively phrased, those 10100 switches and those 802.11g access points ain't going to cut it, bro.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I can imagine all the 100 meg switches that we're going to be finding over the next 12 months. There's going to be a ton of them.
All right, Beth, you are in the unenviable position of following those guys.
Bring us home, Beth. Bring us home.
But go ahead,
bring
Beth.
it home. I echo everyone's statements. I guess to just kind of package it up, being the caboose here, I would say that it really it comes down to the kind of that hyper focus, the understanding that one size doesn't fit all anymore, and that the properties are just going to have to kind of manage to that, where before it was just kind of mostly cookie cutter, right? They could just be, and the guest, they accepted it and they showed up. I think now they need to understand that there's going to be very discerning guests that are going to want to interact in a lot of different ways, and they need to be able to have those options for the guests to feel comfortable and want to come back after they've, maybe taken that first foray into the first trip or whatever, vacation or business trip. So I would say that's really going to be what the rest of this year is going to look like, and into 22 is just really being super focused on just being able to meet all of those ever-changing, kind of ever-demanding guest needs, which is true of the hospitality industry in general. I think it just becomes even more hyper-focused the rest of the, as we reopen and try and get back to some semblance of what the highlights of 2019 gave us.
Right on. Well, good stuff. Well, folks, I've got to say, just because we are in hospitality and just being together, I clamor for those days. I'm very optimistic, just like Brett is, on we will see you soon enough here. And this has just been a very valuable session for me. I learned quite a bit from all of you. I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you for your dedication to this important industry. And I really look forward to seeing you all in the future here in person, so we can rub elbows and have Stephen buy us all drinks.
Our high-tech party is planned.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks all.
Thanks, Zach.